Okay, I think we're all set. वेल सबकी साउंड आपको क्लियर आ रही है?
जी
यस सर, मुझे तो क्लियर आ रही है।
चलिए वेरी गुड। लास्ट साउंड चेक था वो, और आई एम रेडी। तो फिर आईबीए से कौन आपके साथ बैठा हुआ है अभी?
सर अब्दुल रहमान साहब हैं आईबीएसई जो मैनेज कर रहे हैं जूम का अकाउंट।
ओके ओके, चलिए
अब्दुल रहमान, यू देयर?
म्यूट हुए हैं।
Yes, sir, I'm here.
वंडरफुल। अब्दुल रहमान, आप मेरा टेस्ट तो नहीं ले लेंगे कहीं, स्पीड टेस्ट? बुला रहे हैं टेस्ट?
नहीं कोई टेस्ट नहीं।
सॉरी, ऊंचा बोलिएगा।
नहीं कोई टेस्ट नहीं लेंगे आपका।
सही है।
आप हमारा टेस्ट ले लीजिए।
नहीं यार, आप लोगों के लेजेंडरी होते हैं टेस्ट, so that's why you guys are where you are. अच्छा तो फिर last sign from me. I'm ready. Whenever you guys are ready, just let me know.
अब्दुल रहमान आप एडमिट कर रहे हैं जो लोग आ रहे हैं?
जी अब ये फेसबुक पे भी लाइव है और इसकी वीडियो भी रिकॉर्ड हो रही है। अब मैं सबको एडमिट कर रहा हूँ, तो आप स्टार्ट कर सकते हैं।
बताइएगा, इसको हम शेयर कर सकते हैं फेसबुक पे ताकि उधर भी चला जाए?
जी फेसबुक का यूआरएल व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप में शेयर किया था, तो उस पे ये लाइव जा रहा है, तो आप उसको उसी यूआरएल को आप शेयर कर सकते हैं आपने जिनसे भी करना।
आपका क्या पेज है फेसबुक पे?
आपको व्हाट्सएप किया हुआ है।
जी जी बिल्कुल आपने किया हुआ है। वो एक्चुअली मैंने नोट्स खोले हैं।
मैं आपको दोबारा
सर मैं आपको भेज देता हूँ, मैं आपको भेज देता हूँ।
It's live. It's live, yeah. Okay, how do I share this?
Abdul Rahman, shall we start?
Yes, please start.
How do I share this?
Fahim sir, you can take a start now, please.
मैं बस शेयर कर रहा हूँ उसको, बस just 1 second जी। अच्छा जी, अस्सलाम वालेकुम and welcome to today's webinar titled Investment Strategies Under COVID. My name is Fahim Sardar. I'm currently with the government of Pakistan. I'm with the National Security Division and I'm looking after non-traditional security. I'm a senior policy specialist there. Prior to that, I was with Tangent, which is an economics think tank. And prior to that, I was the CEO of Askari Securities for 9 years. So investments is very close to my heart. But this is not about me. It's about investments. And we've got two very interesting, very experienced speakers today who are going to be helping us. So abhi unka introduction deta hu. Before I do that, I'd like to say thank you to IBA and IFMP, जो collectively इस webinar को forward kar rahe hain, who are making this happen. And we hope that further collaboration between the two and many other organizations continues to happen. And we hope that you ask questions, and we also hope that this is a good webinar for all of you. So without further ado, I'll introduce our speakers. Mohammad Asim is the president of the CFA Society in Pakistan. He's also the chief investment officer of Arif Habib Savings and Investments in Karachi. He's also a board member of IFMP. With him, we have Asif Arslan Sumru. He is the managing director of KSP Securities. And you see, now they're going to be doing most of the talking, and I would like you gentlemen to tell more about yourself, and please do share your e-tags and everything ताकि कल को आपको follow करना चाहे या कुछ इस तरह. For example, मेरा YouTube का channel है, Twitter वाला, तो आप लोग भी अपना share करें ताकि we continue to have this discussion. First of all, Asim, can we ask you to sort of explain your background to everyone so that everyone is on the same page?
Ji Fahim sir, I hope you can hear me properly. So thank you very much for introducing me. Thank you to IFMP and IBA for hosting us and inviting us to share our views. It's really good. I am myself an IBA graduate, so it's always an association with IBA, which makes you feel good. So briefly, I am an IBA graduate from 2003, did my MBA from IBA, then landed into a treasury function with a large media house, and since then, after a very short stint, I moved into the investment industry, joined an investment firm. And for the last 13, 14 years, I believe, I have been associated with the investment industry. So I started my career as an analyst, then moved into fund management, have been a buy-side analyst, and become portfolio manager. Initially, I looked after equities, and for the last 4 years, I've been serving as chief investment officer of MCB RFA. Just a small correction, you mentioned about RFA. It's actually MCB RFA Savings and Investment Limited, which is an investment management firm. So we manage about close to 105 billion rupees in various asset classes, mainly fixed income and equities. With regards to my volunteer engagements, I am also serving as president of CFA Society Pakistan, and always be looking forward to add value. And I hope through this session, we share our views and exchange our ideas. So looking forward to this session. Faisal, you need to unmute yourself, I guess.
Now I'm unmuted. Okay, so thank you for the introduction, and sorry for the small mistake. Now, can we please now have Asif Arslan Sumru? Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and your relationship with the investment industry? Asif Arslan, please.
Ji, thank you, Fahim Saab. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you, IFM, for organizing this. Thank you, IBA, for organizing this. My name is Asif Arslan Sumru. I'm currently Managing Director at KSP Securities. I look after the sales and research function. I also happen to have affiliated with IBA back in 2004 when I was studying a few semesters in the BBA program, but then I got a scholarship. I went to Cass Business School, London, to specialize in the field of investments. I had a first class in investment and financial risk management. Thereafter, I decided to come back to Pakistan because of my family preferences. And I finished CFA FRM qualifications while I started working with JS Investments initially as an analyst for almost a year, then working as a junior fund manager all the way to head of equity funds. Under my watch, thankfully, we had great runs. We had quite a few international awards, Lipper Awards. And for 2 years after that, I was associated with Swedish asset manager, Tundra Fonder. They have a country-specific fund, Tundra Pakistan Fund. I was managing that for almost 2.5 years. The fund targeted primarily the Scandinavian European investors.
Wonderful.
And since then, since last almost 8, our focus is investor awareness format as much as we can. So yeah, that's about it from my side. Thanks up.
Yes, thank you very much. So I guess we're all here, and we do know what investments are and what they do. It's basically to grow, let's say, our value, if nothing else. So, Asim, if I can start with you, how do you describe normal investments in a normal situation?
Um, so investment is unfortunately not a very well thought out area generally in Pakistan. So I would say it in that context again. I think people when start talking about investment, they start thinking of doubling or tripling their investments in a very short period of time. I think rather than thinking investments, you just have to look at the concept of savings. That is that and normal individual actually should be looking at building savings, then deciding on allocation, and that's where the investments concepts come in. I think generally the most important areas that I personally have seen over the period that people are neglectful about is in particular the long-term view. That like first of all, the importance of savings that can play a very important role. Then comes about preserving the value of your savings, because I think the most important enemy, the most largely ignored event or enemy is inflation, which every year shaves off 6-7% in terms of its purchasing value from your savings. So without doing anything, you are losing money if you are not investing it anywhere or not pursuing a goal-oriented, objective-oriented saving. Secondly,
So Asim,
I think,
uh,
sure.
so I have to interject here because you're describing something very pertinent here. What's a bet?
Sorry.
What is a bet? Because I mean, if you can sort of explain to everyone the difference between a bet and an investment.
So I think when you are betting on something, you are speculating, and again, the motivation is that in a very short period of time, you are taking chances that probably you can lose some money, but in otherwise you will make a huge gain. And generally speaking, that's the human tendency. That's what attracts us more. That why not take huge bets, and why not double and triple our investments or make actions which can just make us richer in very short period of time. And I think that encourages results in speculation, which obviously is good for the markets, but not good for investors, especially those who are not very well informed or not able to use those investment decisions, which are usually based on speculation. They can take you anywhere. If you are lucky, maybe you can become rich. But largely speaking, the global experience, not just in Pakistan, everywhere it reflects, it proves that ill-informed investors, those who are looking to speculate, usually are actually not good off or not well off or not better off relative to a disciplined investor who is looking to take investments in a more methodical manner.
Interesting, very interesting. Asif, if I can ask you the same question, because we would like to have your perspective, everyone's perspective here. How do you describe a normal investment? What do you think are the key elements here
I think
in
in
a
terms
normal
of
situation?
in a normal situation, I think we have to first understand what sort of the profile and return parameters we are starting our procedure with. So if there's an individual who doesn't really need to rely on their monthly savings, then they can have a longer term horizon. If there's a pension fund who have their liabilities coming after 15 to 20 years, then they can have a longer term horizon. They can afford to take risks. If there are retail investors who are entering the market, they have usually a short-term, day-to-day, an obsession with the stock market that they want to trade every second day. Then they have different, risk parameters. So essentially, when we talk about a normal investing, it's about financial discipline. I think that's the key in terms of the capital markets, in terms of investments, and in terms of personal finance also. So having a financial discipline is very essential at the beginning of your career or your professional life or you as an investor, because you have to set a goal in your mind that this is what you want to achieve in 15 to 20 years of time. And today you have to start planning accordingly, that what is the expected return that you need to generate in order to achieve that goal. Now that goal can be anything. Suppose you are 25 years old and by the age of 50 you want to retire. Now suppose you want to send your kids abroad for $50,000 masters, or you want to save up for your medical funds, where Pakistan is not really a social security net per se, so we have to really plan accordingly. There's one thing that I would like to add, that which is often misconstrued, is that investment and savings go hand in hand. And we need to start with this very immediately in your life. I love this statistics that I want to give to people start of the webinar, is that if you have a 20% savings ratio of your personal income, you will have to work for 35 years to have a designated retirement pool. If you double that up, if you have a 40% savings ratio early in your life, then you only need to work for 20 years to get the
Oh.
same amount of money.
So you're
So
financially independent, huh?
way too early. And then apart from being financially independent, you can channel that resources, because you'll still be young and you can set up a business of your own. You have already prioritized yourself. So it's about being financially disciplined in terms of managing your wealth. I think that's very essential for a country like Pakistan and for a young population like Pakistanis.
Okay, so I mean, we've talked about financial discipline, we've talked about the time horizon, we have talked about investments in a normal scenario. So now let's make things a little more interesting. And I think, uh, I think you guys will back me up that now things are going to get abnormal. So, Asim, if I can ask you, in your experience, how do you define abnormal? Then I'll come to you, Arslan. Asif, sorry.
Okay, so abnormal is again, Pakistan is a very smaller market. हम पाकिस्तान का इकोनॉमिक कॉन्टेक्स्ट ही समझते हैं. हमारे लिए ये करेंसी डेप्रिसिएशन 10-15% की हो जाना, या एकदम इन्फ्लेशन शॉक्स आ जाना, या प्राइसेस एकदम हो जाना. Even we have experience of political destabilization as well. I think Pakistan is being an emerging market. In general context, these are not considered abnormal in the context of Pakistan. But in a normal environment, when you're considering investment environment, I think when the interest rates are more stable, when the GDP growth or economic growth, that is very important, how it is going, and how the market factors that include earnings growth and the company's trajectory. I mean, there are differences within the sectors, within the companies that are going through business cycles, but usual normal upheavals in the economy, going from expansionary phase to a recessionary phase and then going through it, is normal. But in Pakistan, we every 5-6 years or 7 years, we get to have a shock. For instance, 99, 2003, it was a positive shock, then a negative shock in 2008, then came 2013, again a positive shock. But again,
what about 2005, 2004? What happened? That was
yeah,
also
again, so that was, I would say, a normal shock, because that's where, if you're talking about the speculation in the capital market or stock market, when index touch a peak in a very short period of time, and that's normal market, where speculation at times people become over optimistic, and at times market reach towards irrational valuation. That is normal. What is abnormal is, I think, the current environment is abnormal, where we are seeing, we have I think unprecedented in global context as well, that we have never seen that economies be shut down throughout the whole world. So the whole world is standing on one side, and along with that, the way it's being tackled varies across the globe. Somewhere the economies, the governments, and the regulatory agencies, the monetary authorities, somewhere are very aggressive in terms of supporting the economy. And there are economies like Pakistan, which are more, I think, dependent on natural progression of events and have little ability to actually induce a big change in the course of events.
Okay,
So I think the current environment is fairly abnormal in that
interesting.
sense.
So, I mean, Asif, if I can bring you in here now, I'll ask you the same question. I mean, how do you define abnormality? And if you can just touch upon what you're seeing right now, because we are going to, in the next session, we're going to go deep into COVID and what the effects are. But can you describe um, abnormality and your experience?
I think if you talk about abnormalities, there's no doubt that macroeconomic scenario that we are going through locally and globally is an abnormal circumstance. This is a black swan event which wasn't really factored in by local investors or the global investors or even the hedge fund managers. So yeah, that's an abnormal scenario that we are living in. Now we have to live within it. The question is whether this becomes a new normal. Right, I have my apprehensions over that. I feel that the vaccine will come in 6 to 9 months down the lane, and then we will be starting to go back to the normalization of the economic regime. But by that time, some economies would have dented much severely than Pakistan. I'm talking about the global ones because their fiscal stimulus is humongous. Their debt to GDP ratios are too high, and they have aging population, which is an issue. And their structural themes are completely different from Pakistan. So Pakistan, on the other hand, if you would have asked me 4 months ago, we had interest rates at 13%. We had oil prices at $75. I think that wasn't a normal case for me. That wasn't a bullish sign for Pakistan. Where we are sitting right now, two fundamental things have happened. Your interest rates have come down 6% to almost 7%, from 13 to 7%. And secondly, the international oil prices and commodity prices have softened. And as we have depreciated the currency to their fair levels, we started seeing normalization of the economy from now. So from a capital markets point of view, I think stability is not normal for Pakistan. We in Pakistan, we have already seen instability is a normal, right? So at times we have interest rate at 13%. Sometimes we take it down to 7%. Then there's a balance of payment crisis because of exports, and then there is a readjustment. We are back to the
Interesting.
program. I think right now where we are sitting is a normalization of the economic regime. So the government is putting in that. How to survive in that environment before we go on to the details, we must understand that Pakistan has had extreme swings. You talked about 2005 and 2007. On one hand, we have had currency shock in 2008 and then 2013, and then we kept having it in 2018 and 19. Right. So
Yep.
these are volatilities that we have seen in the capital markets that erodes the confidence of people, business manager, and we as people also. So most of the bright lads end up leaving the country in search of better job securities and health benefits globally. So I think in terms of the abnormal signs right now, we are back to normal, if you ask me. And I think for a capital market investor, there's always an opportunity. It's about the asset classes that we pick.
It's about an opportunity and how we look at it. I have to bring Asim here. Asim, what's your opinion about what Asif just said? That I think if I heard Asif correctly, that in Pakistan there's a different kind of normality. Asif, sorry, Asif, did I hear you correctly? We have a different kind of
Absolutely.
normal. So, Asim,
Absolutely.
can we have your thoughts on that, please?
Gee, sure. I think Arslan is right, and that's what I was saying, that we had more abnormal periods in our economic and market history than the normal periods. And for instance, we have, if we just go back 20 years since 2000, 1999, 2000, when the country went through an economic squeeze, especially when immediately after announcing the atomic experiments. And after that, the aftermath resulted in very huge strain on our resources. Then came an era from 2002, 2003, where economic stabilization really took a leap. And till 2007-8, we saw explosive economic growth, economic stability returning, and business expansion was happening. And I remember that's the time when I joined the markets around 2005, when we used to hear reports about Asian tiger and 5%
Sure.
forever GDP growth assumptions and where would Pakistan be in the next 20 years, 30 years. And since again, then hit 2008, which slowed down the things a bit. And that's, and again, in the global context, Pakistan has not been doing that well. That again, initially we were set for and we were positioned for. Then we started lagging behind both internally and both in the regional perspective as well, both in terms of our key economic structure, especially post 2008, we went into more economic slowdown and gradually we were expecting until 2013 when the economic growth slightly started to pick up. And unfortunately, it again also did not last it very long. In
We have a
2017, yeah.
different kind of normal, so we're going to have to, I think, back up Asif on that point. So, Asim, continuing with you, can you, how do you describe COVID, Corona, and the effect that it has had? And if you can kindly, please also touch upon psychology, because it appears that it has a huge psychological impact. I'll repeat the question. If you can now, Asim, dig into what does COVID do? What has it done? And how has it affected the psychology of, let's say, a normal person such as myself?
Gee, I think with regards to psychology, with regards to impact, if we just look at just a few months ago, when there was extreme gloom throughout the economy, when especially once WHO declared it as a pandemic, and there was panic throughout the world with regards to the future trajectory, with regards to the extreme stress that it could bring into, because everybody was considering about lockdowns and how long would it continue, and how, especially economies where it is difficult for the governments to sustain the overall population in terms of food resources and providing the basic necessities of life. I think that created a lot of stress, especially the economies which I think the businesses which were mostly affected included those who were Pakistan. In Pakistan context, fortunately or blessing in the disguise, we never have that much of tourism, we never have that much of inflow from foreign investors or that much of integrity with the rest of the world that would have. But otherwise, the rest of the economies, even from China to US and Canada, everywhere, there was huge gloom and huge negative impact in terms of psychology, and that resulted in crash in markets. If you look at, actually made investors very depressed about the outlook, causing them to take actions and push the market to the levels which are, and right now we can say that looks irrational to push valuations to those levels. But that's how I think the initial reaction is. And as we read about it from the expert, it looks like that it's going to have a lasting impact in terms of the future consumption patterns and the way the economies adapt and re-evolve in terms of the new trajectory.
I'm going to bring Asif here. Asif, I'm going to ask you the same question. How do you describe COVID in your experience, in your assessment? What effect has it had generally? And if you can touch upon the psychological impact that it has had, can you describe that?
I think along with a few points that Asim Bhai has already mentioned, we have to see the impact of COVID from all the angles. Number one, there has been reams of unemployment, right? People have lost their jobs, or people who have had their pay cuts. And we know people who have shut down their businesses, and they are in deep neck of losses, I should say. And they are taking a financial burden, which will be very hard for them to repay in next couple of years. Although the government can do this much to solve the problem, ameliorate the issues stemming out of it. But naturally, we have to see that there's a depression. There is a depression among the masses. There's absolutely no doubt about it. You can just give some cherries. So I think what the COVID has done, essentially, it has exposed the weaknesses of the economies locally and globally. For instance, one thing which was not too, looked after since quite a long time is the debt levels that the global economies have and the local economies have.
Very
And
true.
Pakistan has suddenly been exposed to that because, as Asim Bhai was saying, that we are not globally integrated. So yes, we haven't had much of a decline in our tourism. Neither are we so export-oriented economy also. So we saw that the exports did dip, but then they started bouncing back because of the currency depreciation. So
Yep.
now we have to see that, in last 15 years, because of the cyclicality of the economy, markets, and Pakistan as a whole, the government is now pushed to do something about it, pushed to resolve the impending structural issues which were pending with the economy. So I'll just like to give an example. Yes, we have seen unfortunate scenario with PA in terms of the accident,
Mm.
in terms of the pilot's fiasco, making globally headlines about it, in terms of fixing the workforce size.
Mhm.
Similarly, we have seen action being taken on the railways, and now they're going into the Pakistan steel mills. Going, get stuff, the stuff gets going. So the government is now actually, in my observable experience, I should say, they are tripling their efforts on increasing the exports and documenting the economy. Look, so Pakistan has, I think we have a personality that until unless we are not pushed to do something, we don't do it. So under the garb of FATF also, we are documenting the
Yeah.
economy, we are digitizing the economy, we are connecting the entire financial trail of the system. These are the issues that we should have solved. So these were more of a governance issue. I'd just like to conclude with my experience, and that has actually, COVID has brought this into the attention of people, is that from 2010 to 2016 or 17, I should say, the economy was all right. I mean, the valuations were good, but the fact that the global investors shunned our markets for good was because we had security issues. We had number of terrorist accidents, we have number of bomb blasts. Now that ratio has deteriorated and rather improved drastically in last 2 years. So when we used to go out to Scandinavian investors, they would ask us, is your family safe in Pakistan? Is your, cousin safe? How are you surviving? What are the measures we should do when we are bringing foreign investors back? So COVID is actually helping Pakistan, in my opinion, and the other economies also, to solve the black holes which were impending for almost years. So it was a
So,
governance
so
catalyst.
sorry to jump in, but then please continue. So, I mean, what you're saying is, if I understand you correctly, that you're saying that COVID is forcing us to basically address our problems. Am I correct in understanding what you're saying? Asif, can you hear me? Asif, can you hear me? Okay, we'll go to Asim. Asim, can you describe how have things changed for you in this COVID scenario? I mean, okay, I'll try to give a description. In a normal scenario that you described in the investment situation and everything. How has it changed for you now as we speak?
Yeah. So I think one thing which was introduced to the environment throughout the globe, consistently throughout the globe, and personally I was also surprised to see, is the word uncertainty. Throughout the globe, investment strategists from the best of the houses, from the largest of the asset managers in the most developing countries, uh, certainly were certain of one thing, and that is uncertainty. Especially at the beginning of crisis when it was not very clear how would it eventually pan out, and slightly and slowly things have started to clear out. Then people started to make their projections, and then thanks to technology, when people started to follow data more quickly, where the information becomes more available, and
Mm-hmm.
people find and the investment environment and the market data to be more resilient than initially thought. And I think
Yep.
that is one reason which has resulted in the sharp rebound in markets we have seen throughout the globe, especially
Mm-hmm.
the risky asset classes. So
Okay.
initial reaction, while it was panic throughout the market, both equity, be it commodities, and rush towards gold and safe havens.
Mm-hmm.
But one more thing which I think changed the course of events and is kind of abnormal is the way the central banks throughout the globe put their weight behind ensuring sustainability and stability to the system. I mean, there are economies which
Being
actually went
expansionary in
to
nature. Being
which
expansionary in nature.
which went as high as up to 20-25% of their GDP in terms of direct and indirect support to the economy, be it US. So that is unprecedented, and I think that is one very important thing which has helped otherwise this environment to become more lethal and more damaging for the global economy. And thankfully, the overall environment has been actually better than initially feared, and things have started to improve.
Okay. So, okay, now I'm going to ask you a very, very basic question. How has your daily routine been affected by COVID, in the sense that, you know, you're looking into investments and everything? So, I mean, how is your routine changed? Because earlier we talked about a normal situation. It's slightly abnormal. आपकी routine में क्या change आई है? क्या चीज नजर आ रही है? If you can summarize it.
So in terms of investment processes, if we talk about, I think the way initially we were looking at, we were more intoward in terms of understanding, relating variables, making forecasts. Now we have become more outward as well. So it is very important to follow the global market, the global data, how the economies are responding to it, how the markets are leading into the data points, especially in this environment. Pakistan has again become very much reliant on its sustainability of its exports in terms of its relations with the trading partners and with its lenders as well. So this environment was very important. So I think one routine in terms of investment processes that we have started following is again very deep following of monitoring of the global events and how the markets are responding to it. And I think that connection is already visible, because Pakistan is also reacting in the similar manner, and especially the global developments with regard to vaccine now has become very important. And I think with regards to the local environment, I think it has become a routine to follow very closely the data with regards to the COVID cases, the recovery cases, and their potential impact on businesses. So the industries that we were earlier following from their different perspective, now we are following with a view that how things are getting normal for them in terms of their orders, in terms of demand and so factors and so on.
Azim, listening to you, COVID sounds like an opportunity.
Yeah, I would say I think.
Have you turned it into an opportunity?
I think it's an opportunity for everyone as well. So one thing is very important again with regards to what's your view on returning towards normalcy, with regards to how long would it take, with regards to especially currently the uncertainties with regards to the fear of second peak in Pakistan as well. I mean, we have lately started to see the COVID cases coming down, the overall impact getting tapered off and then slightly improving. And there are research studies, international research studies, which are looking at Pakistan, probably contemplating that the COVID impact is probably going to die down or is on trajectory towards normalization. Now, again, there are still fears. Given the nature of this virus, you would still want to be very closely watching how the things are panning out actually. In terms of opportunity, I would say that I think we also shared at several points in time research notes as well with regards to valuations of the market and with regards to how the global markets are reading into this event. So this event was being treated as one-off event. There was a possibility that this could have turned into a 6-month event, one-year event, or 2-year event. However, there was a consensus that probably this is going to be a one-off event and it is not going to recur every every year in terms of creating or disruptions in the market. So yes, in terms of even business responses, so some businesses actually it opened the doors for them. Technology throughout the globe is
very interesting. Asif, good to have you back. I think we lost you a little while back. So I'm actually going to retrace my steps here because I had a question for you. Then I'm going to ask you another question. Okay, my question earlier regarding the previous point, what does COVID do? How does it affect people? Can you finish your point? We lost you there. That do you think it affects human psychology, COVID? To what extent does it, if it affects human psychology? And can you talk a little bit about interaction? Has COVID reduced our interaction or increased our interaction?
Thank you, Fahim. So sorry about disconnection the other time.
No, no, no issues.
So yes, psychologically, I think the impact on the consumer point of view has been that there's been a marked decline in the consumption. People are now more careful about their money, where they're allocating it. The
Okay,
luxury consumption has declined. People
very
have
important.
started realizing what their needs are in real life. We cannot survive without electricity, but we can survive without shopping malls. We can survive without eating out.
Sure.
We can survive without tourism. So that has been one factor that has actually, changed the outlook of consumers. Secondly, there has been an increased focus, I think remarkable increased focus on the health awareness among the people, whether it be urbanized people, whether it be rural areas that we're talking about. But there's a genuine fear among people that what if they fall sick? Now, what if they don't have savings to, entertain their medical expenses? And what happens to their family if there is any disruption to the life of the bread earner?
Sure.
So yes, that's a psychological impact that we have seen among the people. And in terms of the other side, I think the governance, that was the last point I wanted to make. The governance issues have been highlighted and exposed in this time because of the COVID.
Very
We are
true.
now looking at the fact that we don't have enough doctors, enough nurses to treat the population as a percentage of population. We don't have enough beds. That has prompted the government and the local people to take this as an opportunity to fix the house. So I guess that's the psychological fear that people have incorporated in their bloodstreams. And in
Mhm.
terms of the interaction, if you ask me, I think people who have been affected by
Mhm.
COVID in the urban side, I think the interaction between people to people has actually increased. I mean, not talking about physically. We see a lot
That's
of
right.
people spending a lot of time online now doing these webinars. Otherwise, we used to have
Mm.
seminars and talk about it. Now people are spending more time reading. Now people are reading more time analyzing global trends. And there are a lot of people that I've seen, young grads, doing online courses. So the
Right.
interaction with knowledge has increased. Even though with your casual time, you might have not seen your friends in the last couple of weeks over a cup of tea, but the real interaction, the value adding interaction has increased.
That's interesting. Okay, so you think that interaction has actually gone up? Okay, so that's actually that's very interesting. Which brings me to my next point, Asif, once again for you, that how, in your opinion, what has changed for you as a manager, as an investment manager, as someone who guides people? What has changed for you? What have you seen in this COVID situation? Now we're talking about an abnormal situation. It's not normal. Something is different. Is it the new normal, as I think it was you who pointed that out? Can you describe what is the new, what has changed for you? Let's start from there.
I
Okay.
think for me, we have realized, sorry, is it Asim or
Aslan, please go ahead.
It's Asif.
Thank you. So I think we have realized that having excessive meetings is become a checklist. You can have a webinar with your client, with your banker. You can have a video call with your colleagues, and you can get the work done. That's number one. Number two, the push to digitization has increased drastically. The regulator has been very supportive that way. Previously we used to have wet signature requirement कि आपको जाना है उनसे साइन लेनी है फॉर्म लेना है ओरिजिनल फॉर्म जैसे कुछ सरकारी काम हो रहा होता है but now things have sped up because of the fact that digitization with the regulator is saying fair enough if you have a scanned copy we're going to entertain that also. So the push to
True.
digitization has increased, and I am personally witnessing that a lot of people from
Mhm.
Middle East or from the overseas, the Pakistanis residing in the Western countries, now they have started looking back at the market. Maybe it is because of the fact that the COVID has given them job insecurities, number one, or
Okay.
maybe because of the fact that the low interest rate scenario that we are seeing right now is a once in a decade opportunity for them to
Mhm.
invest in the markets.
Mhm.
And thirdly, I've realized that I think students have become more proactive in terms of acquiring new skills. This is something that I
Really?
really appreciate. Yes,
Can you
absolutely.
expand on that a little bit? That's interesting.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, quite a lot of queries that I get on LinkedIn and Twitter is a student asking what are the new set of skills which are required for next 15 to 20 years. I mean, ASEM is there, CFA is a prestigious qualification, will always be a prestigious qualification, but the new jobs which are entering into the market from data analytics side pay you much higher than a CFA charter holder gets. So you can essentially be working in Pakistan, have an account on a freelancing websites and get a better salary than a top graduate in Pakistan. So I think for me, this is a promising trend. And I am actually thankful that it has happened.
Mm-hmm. Interesting, very interesting. So, I mean, in your opinion, you're saying that people have become more savvy to they're adjusting themselves. Have I understood you correctly?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I mean, do you think this is a permanent thing, or do you think that this is something that's going to just fizzle away very shortly?
I think it was a matter of time. There is an S curve globally in terms of the knowledge already. So this has
Mm-hmm.
been a catalyst that has taken the gradient upwards in terms of the push to digitization and
Mm-hmm.
seeking knowledge and naturally, increasing interaction with knowledge per se.
Okay, that's interesting. Asim, can I ask you the same question? Do you think people are adjusting themselves to this new situation in an effective manner?
Yeah, I think we have to look at the segments of economy. So there are segments which haven't, I mean, in terms of masses, I would say, they are really not prepared for it. So they are slow to react to it. However, there are segments like students which are very apprehensive about their careers, their future path, and they have become really alarmed with regards to what is happening. And I
Okay.
think that instinct is very important, and the current environment is just letting them think in terms of the skills as Arslan mentioned. And I think this is very good thing. But here I would like to add one thing is that again, while since there's many students on the platform as well, that while jumping onto skills, keep the long-term careers in mind in terms of every few years. I mean, there are few skills which become very important for a very short period of time. So don't overcommit yourself to a skill which
Sure.
just may not have a life. I mean, especially in technology, this is a very fast evolving space. So either you have to remain very competitive, very up to date in terms of skills, and keep evolving yourself. So do not overcommit to a particular career. Otherwise, we have seen, I mean, even in the last 5 7 years, we have seen certain careers becoming very in terms of light and focus, and then they disappear, they fizzle out because they have been replaced by other technologies. So in
Sure.
that area, I would like to guide students with regards to while managing the career. So focus on keep those things in mind while committing yourselves to those. In terms of the investment behavior, as Arsalan is saying, generally since investors, we have a very small market, and usually the investors are savvy. They're connected online through the exchange, so they have become more available. And there have been more interest with regards to the online material and the, I think, interaction with the fund managers, with the interaction with the analysts, and know-how about the investment. So that is a positive sign. And since this environment, as Alsalan was earlier saying, that since this is inducing right kind of, in financial insecurity or at the back of mind, the importance of savings and how you manage. So that has, I think, has
It's like,
improved and is
I mean, it's
reflecting in.
almost like forced savings, and it's almost like people are being forced to save. Am I correct? I mean, people are being forced to rethink their as Aslan and Asim, even you have very rightly pointed out that consumption patterns check kiए जा रहे हैं, recheck किए जा रहे हैं. So now this is an open-ended question for both of you gentlemen. Do you think if we are learning more from the internet, as you are saying, if we are changing our ways of thinking, our consumption patterns, do you think there is any possibility of this being permanent?
I think first of all, with regards to markets investors have a very short memory throughout the globe. Markets are more focused on forward looking and how the way things are moving on. as you can see in the current markets as well. So markets have all forgotten about, even in US market where we are seeing that COVID hasn't actually peaked yet. I mean,
Okay.
they are still, the numbers are very, with regards to the impact, very worrying, and with regards to how would they actually pan out. However, still the markets are relatively giving less weight to the COVID cases and more to how the economy is actually bouncing back.
Okay.
How the economic data points are coming over the period, and that is how the markets are actually reacting. So I will let Arslan add to it.
Please, Arslan, can we get your thoughts on this? Do you think it's going to be a permanent thing, or do you think if we're learning more from the internet, or as you said, we're interacting more? So I mean, do you think this is going to be something permanent, or is it something temporary?
I absolutely believe this is going to be a permanent change. I'll just like to give a personal example. Never in my life or my family life, we bought Eid clothes online. For the
That's a
this
good
is
one.
the first time. So for my brother, for my father, we had to, just accept whatever was delivered at home. And I won't quote one of the listed companies, which is very high in the textile exposure, said their e-sales have increased by 100%. In
Wow.
last couple of months compared to last year. And this is talking about not a very low base, but a very high base. And secondly, we all get these texts from different e-commerce things, right? So even the delivery guys 3 months ago who are still shut, have now set up their online pages. Now they want you
Yeah,
to buy on.
that's
And even
true.
the furniture, baby clothes, these were things which were not happening 3 months ago. But now I think there is a push from the there's a push either also to the consumer and to the businesses to connect on the e-platform. And as we will have trust coming from the people in terms of the electronic commerce, so I think this is a permanent change and a good change for the economy. And I think we'll have to see how people adjust to that after that. But we have seen, so you see, 20 years ago, mobile wasn't a necessity.
Yeah.
Now I think even a 5-year-old kid knows how to go to an app and download something for himself. So I think the consumption pattern are changing and they will never reverse. They will only keep increasing in that forte, in my opinion.
Okay,
And I
that's
think
interesting.
I would like to add here, I think the
Please.
way we work in terms of markets, in terms of managing our teams, we have also become more open. So we
Absolutely.
never we were open to this idea of working from home and teams collaborating on over internet to get the things done and share the reports and everything. Now it's all happening. And I think this is going to have implications, long-term implications for the commercial real estate that's being talked
I
about.
have to jump in. Sorry to interject. I have to jump in. Working from home does have its benefits. I mean, it is a new experience, and it does have its benefits. I've received a message that people cannot hear me. If I can ask you gentlemen, can you hear me properly? Can you
Yeah,
hear
it's
my
good.
voice?
Yes,
I
we
can hear
can.
you very well.
Okay. So I'll just try to speak up a little bit if there's a problem. Okay, so now we're coming to the final segment of our discussion, in which we're basically going to talk about the international perspective, and then we're going to leave each other with some positives of what we can do to adjust to this changing environment. So we'll start with the international perspective, and Asim, if you can sort of tell me internationally, how has the economy changed? It's a big question. I know it's an unfair question. You don't have much time. Arslan, same goes for you. The question is going to come to you as well. So, can you, Asim, can you tell us how has the economy changed internationally?
Yeah. So as you said, it's very early to talk about how the economies eventually pan out. But for the timing, it looks at, I think the way I see it is that you can classify economies across the world into two groups: those which have very deep pockets, very strong economies, and they can do anything and everything to support their economy and get it back on the course to normal. And there are economies which are likely to have, again, less questions, less ability to actually react, and are more vulnerable and will have long-term implications with regards to how they adjust to it. Now, there is one natural progression with regards to how your economic structure is. So those which have more integrated model would again see how the integration model is going. Globally speaking, I think the things which are being talked about is with regards to question marks with regards to the fate of globalization, which again, I think until now, what I have seen is that it's still very uncertain to, or very early to say that globalization has ended and we are becoming more towards less globalization. Certainly, this is going to impact and would take a lot of time, but still too early to say. However, the global linkages in terms of the way you are managing businesses, as we were discussing earlier with regards to online sales, that has resulted in very big change with regards to how the companies are going to maintain their business linkages with regards to their suppliers. And I think that is where an opportunity for Pakistan that was initially highlighted as well, that the countries may want to diversify their supply chains, and Pakistan may emerge as an alternate route, because already it has some capacity as well, already has lower exports, and the government can use this environment for our industries to actually grow their exports and gain into that side as well. Now come towards the fiscal side and how the economies are managing. So I think across the globe it is common that the economies are incurring huge fiscal deficits, abnormal fiscal deficits, higher fiscal deficits. Some are resorting to internal borrowing, some are resorting to external borrowing. I think Pakistan context in this side is very important, as Aslan was saying. We already have a very high debt to GDP ratio. So it was not high if you go that high if you go 5 years back, 4 years back, or 6 years back. But gradually over the period, we have incurred huge deficits, 6-7%, especially in the last 3-4 years. And next couple of years, it looks like we are in 7% range at least. That means huge implications for our future outlook as well. That means reduced ability of the government in terms of sustaining, and I think which is the right focus as well. The government is now trying to encourage local businesses actually to come in and mobilize the economic growth going forward. As you can see over the last 3-4 years, I'm sure you would observe that that government itself was a huge contributor in terms of making the investments, mobilizing the overall economy. And generally, our private businesses or the rest of the economy was more on the consumption side. But I think that cycle has to now reverse for us to get out of this economic cycle. Otherwise, this very high debt burden, reduced government ability, and with absence of the corporate sector in terms of mobilizing resources, then that means we can still remain stuck in lower growth, and that is not good in terms of the huge population and disparity that we have.
And it can cause more stress, basically. So, Arslan, coming to you, if I ask you, I mean, what's your perspective, and how do you see? What have you observed? What do you see in the international economy? How have things changed?
Just to take slightly a few more minutes on that. Number one, I think we have to see how things have emerged over last 3 to 5 years. So firstly, we have to appreciate that China has increasingly become a next superpower, giving a rightful economic competition to the US and the Western societies as a whole, right? So there's a latent realization that the US dollar roles in global currency might fizzle out in next 15 to 30 years, right? Because US sees it coming, we see it coming because of the Chinese growth, howsoever has been managed is remarkable. So that has forced the US government to actually focus on ensuring and preparing for tomorrow, where people will not be accepting dollar as a universal store of wealth. So we have seen that the trade talks have emerged after that in last 3 years. So firstly, US was talking with Canada, and then Mexico, and then China, and now they have a tiff with India also in terms of their trade deficit. And if we see that in last 10 years, the fact that US markets have gone up drastically compared to the other economies and the other markets is because of the knowledge-based invention of Tesla's, Facebook's, Amazon, Walmart. Now, these are the ideas which are now in the money. Initially, they were just loss-making ideas. Now, these are profitable ventures in terms of tech, in terms of electric vehicles. So if we take that into consideration, what's happening globally now post-COVID is there's an iron wall between US and China, and the world is getting bipolar, and either it's you're with us or without us once again, right? So that's a global scenario that we are looking in politically. Now, if we talk about economically, in last 10 years, the governments globally and the central banks had kept their interest rates at almost 0 to -%. And why did they do that? They wanted to create growth to come in and inflation to come in. And why do they want inflation to come in? Because they have debts whose real value, जो मतलब inflation adjust करके जो फिर उनकी जो असल value होती है, मतलब जैसे मेरे वालिद साहब ने 20 साल पहले अगर 10 लाख रुपए का लोन लिया था, that doesn't mean a big deal right now because of the inflation. So
Sure.
they wanted inflation to come in, but the inflation hasn't actually come in. So वो process खत्म होने से पहले ही we had COVID. Now, COVID, as Asim Bhai was rightly saying, has forced these developed economies to give even more debt, right? Fiscal debt or le rahe hain. So debt to GDP's ratios have increased. Now, what would happen after 5 years? Nobody's thinking about next 5 years. People are now focusing about getting back to post-COVID rates. मतलब COVID खत्म हो जाए, हमारी economy 2-3% growth पे आ जाए, and we'll be happy. But by that time, the debt will increase globally to that extent कि अगर interest rate 0 से 2% भी हो गया, so even developed economies will find it very difficult to pay the interest cost because उनकी population.
I have to jump in then. Please continue. I just want to add that it might become unsustainable.
Absolutely. So that's a bigger threat to the global economy than COVID right now. That 3-5 years down the lane, when interest rates increase from 0 to 3% globally, I'm talking about US, UK, Japan ko to ab chhod hi de, European Union ke andar, there would be talks about EU breakup. We are already seeing Italy having a major issue with that, and Spain also saying कि European Central Bank ने हमें constrict कर दिया है इस stimulus देने से और हमारी economy में ये हो रहा है. Right, so you see fiscal side is not increasing क्योंकि population में अभी ज़्यादा growth नहीं आ रही, young population रही नहीं है, health cost बढ़ रही है. So सिर्फ US के अंदर हमने देखा है कि knowledge based growth आ रही है, even China के अंदर. Now this is a scenario that we are living in. This is a scenario that we're living in. So what is there for Pakistan? There's an iron wall between US and China. So Pakistan has to integrate with both the parties. Right, so you have to be integrated in global value chains. हमें ये pitch करना होगा कि हमारे law and order has improved, हमारे export policies have improved, we are encouraging people to come in, there is ease of business, there is low interest rate, there is skilled labor. Now that's something that we have to focus on. Skilled labor हो, चाहे वो industry में काम करने वाली हो, चाहे वो English speaking population हो just to speak on the call centers, और चाहे वो tech enabled or computer programmers हो, चाहे वो soft skills में हो. So we have to integrate ourselves with global value chains. Because we are starting from a very low base. So we just have to come to a point where हमारी export-led GDP growth comes to 4 to 5%, and we start creating enough jobs for the graduates. And that's when the profit.
I have to jump in and ask you a question. So do you think we can recover from this post-COVID situation? Because I personally am very optimistic, but I just would like to get your thoughts on this. And do you think the recovery is possible?
Absolutely possible. Absolutely possible because the government did not take a lot of debt to support the COVID related stimulus. Let's be honest, it's less than 2% of GDP, which is the right strategy. Number two, our export to GDP ratio is already 7%. That's a historic low. और 15 साल पहले that was almost 12% और remittances होता था 7%. अब हमारे remittances जो है हमारे डॉलर की appetite बढ़ते हैं, export नहीं बढ़ते. So we are starting from a very low base where you've got factories shut. इनको अगर आप comparative energy दे दें, जो भी international RLNG prices सस्ती हो गई हैं, then we are as comparative, in fact more comparative than Bangladesh and Vietnam because we've got low labor cost, interest rate have come down, and energy आपने कम कर दी और law and order improve कर दिया. I think we are set to recover after 6 months if we have the right strategy. But this is an ongoing medium-term process.
I have to ask Asim that same question. Asim, I mean, there's a little bit of crystal ball gazing here and a bit of emotions here. Do you think we can recover from this COVID situation?
Absolutely. I think, as Aslan was saying, and if you recall, just pre-COVID, back in March, if you look at the overall economic situation, we were already on the recovery path. So we were already recovering from very significant currency depreciation that we had seen in the earlier year. So that thing was already done. Now the commodity prices outlook is favorable for Pakistan, at least the way it looks like now, with regards to our inflation expectations as well. Now, in terms of the overall current account, which was the mother of evils in the last couple of years, we were seeing current account deficits touching $18-20 billion is now under 5 billion. It's a very manageable level for Pakistan. We need support in terms of private investment, both from the foreign investors and local investors as well. And I think this sustained investment, while addressing the issues that have been one big issue, security, that was discussed and highlighted by Salan, has been addressed to a large extent. And that was the reason that you can say was kind of a lost decade for us from 2009 onwards, where we see the terrorist activities increasing to a very abnormal level. And now they have come down. In terms of investment environment, this is very important. Now, with regards to the current economic stability, I think the way things are progressing, it's very positive with regards to economic trajectory. And for us, especially in terms of public policy, if you look at the power sector is one big issue, which has been just straining the overall economy. In fact, for the last 10 years or so. So now things have, the government has rightly taken it up, and it is on the priority. And I hope that things will gradually be improved, as we have already started taking account of now need for long-term planning, learning from our experience with regards to committing to very high costs. Now the government is looking to rationalize. The solution obviously is not easy. It is going to take time, but at least there are steps in the right direction. And with the stability, although debt is reaching to alarming levels, to 85%, but it's still manageable. If your economic growth starts recovering, then overall just the economic growth would solve a lot of problems for you in terms of the overall, I think, the public finances, in terms of putting opportunities for the domestic population, and in terms of providing the future stability to other indicators as well. So which is very much possible. However, I think it's not a question of whether we will or not. It's just a matter of how long does it take. So, and it depends on how swiftly we respond to the needed actions and take the corrective actions.
So now we come to the tail end of our discussion, and I'll bring Arsalan here into the discussion. And okay, now I'd like to ask you, both you gentlemen, that please let's give our viewers, our friends, some practical thoughts, some actions. So from that perspective, Arsalan, what are your thoughts? What should people do? I mean, I know it's a very open-ended question, and it's meant to be open-ended so that we can hear your thoughts. लोग क्या करें ऐसी situation में? अब investments के मद्देनजर रखते हुए.
All right. I think initially it's very important for people, to cut back on your excess spending. If you were spendthrift, become a saving thrift right now. These next 6 to 12 months are going to be very tricky for all of us. There is question mark on employment everywhere, and there will be tough times. And as soon as initially you see the businesses might say कि चले हम 2-3 महीने तक salary दे सकते हैं. उसके बाद they will realize that we cannot even entertain a lot of people. So it's very important to cut back on your excess consumption, go down to bare minimum, number one. Number two, for businesses who have money, it's about cutting the excess fat. ठीक है, अगर आपके कोई फजूल खर्ची हो रही थी, if you were just paying for leasing which you don't need right now, you might want to delay that. Take the government schemes. These are time oriented, these are excellent. So let's utilize that. For pension funds, for asset allocation managers, you must understand कि अगर आप यहाँ पे fixed income में invest करेंगे, तो 6 months down the lane you will only have 3% return. मतलब 100 पे सिर्फ 3 रुपए मिलेंगे. These are the risks not worth taking. मतलब there's you have to go back to the equity markets. आपको stock market में थोड़ी बहुत investment करनी चाहिए. Look at your potential appetite. अगर आपको सिर्फ dividend yielding stocks है, go and check the financial accounts of companies. Only go to those companies which have lower earnings risk, जिसमें earnings risk ना हो, और आपका sound business हो. ताकि आपको कम से कम 10-11% डिविडेंड यील्ड मिलती जाए if you are a pensioner or pension fund manager. And I think lastly, it's important for young people to not lose faith. I still remember when I graduated, you know, these were global economic crisis back in 2007 and 8, right? So I was given the advice by my rector of a university. He said, go for a master's, spend the year studying, right? It would be difficult for you to find a job. So it's better to utilize this time effectively. And I think that's what everyone should do. We should increase our skill set and do not go for initial salary if someone is even offering you a job. Don't bargain too much. Get into the system right now.
Interesting. Get your foot in the door and be part of the system. Am I right?
Absolutely.
Same question for you. And, you know, I mean, practically, what would you like to share with our friends who are listening right now or might be listening in the future to the recording? What do you think they should do?
So we have a very wide pool of audiences. So I would just speak it generally first in terms of the investments, how to approach investments. Although this is again a very customized, probably individual specific decision how to invest according to their own circumstances with regards to their risk profile. How much money do they have? How much cushion do they have? Therefore, without going into that side, because I think that is that would require a personal deliberation with regards to your circumstances. But generally, in terms of asset classes, I think, as Saline pointed out, that since interest rates are low with respect to Pakistan, although in global context, 6-7% is probably still a huge interest rate, but for Pakistan, where we are more used to seeing interest rates north of 10%, 7% interest rates is relatively lower. And that means your ability to grow your investments to fend off inflationary pressures would remain low. So you should look towards more risky asset classes. However, keep that in mind that risky asset classes are called risky for a reason. That is, they are volatile over a period of time. However, nature of these risky investment is again, especially while talking about equity market, I usually consider it as starting a business. You won't expect taking the money out of your business the very next month, or you would want actually that business to grow and develop over a period of time, which requires a very long-term thinking. That is how one should approach investments. And one particular area where I have seen we are all neglectful about, in fact, I personally also not been very attentive about is your retirement focus, is your long-term focus. That what you are going to need in a 10 years time, 15 years time, 20 years time. Consider the impact people are usually neglectful about. Generally, we have seen that people are not considering their obligations with regards to their post-retirement or when they will be out of their jobs. So that also needs to be very well planned, and that requires incorporating market expectations. Generally speaking, what we are advising to clients, again, as I said, that investments is a very tricky matter, and it has to be incorporated in the it has to be discussed and managed in the context of your personal circumstances of risk and return expectation. But generally speaking, we feel that given the stock market over the last 4 years has not been performing well. In fact, I think we are at least 4 years back in terms of where the stock market were. So this is an opportunity, although it has recovered a bit. But look at the context, it is still down at least 20% from just pre-COVID levels. And I think about significantly lower from where it was in 3 years' time. So this environment is, yes, challenging, but this is given an opportunity. However, keep your, I think, overall risk exposures in mind. Those who need money in 6 months or maybe have nearby obligations should not be considering very risky exposures and manage their finances accordingly.
Okay. Can I, Arslan and Asim, can I ask you both? And I'm sorry, this is the only time I'm going to try to put words in your mouth. I'm confessing that. Can you please share with all of us that there's no need to panic? Can we say that?
In terms of panicking, absolutely not. We don't need to panic. We need to be careful. We need to be thoughtful, and we need to be planning better.
Asim?
I think markets are roaring throughout the world. Investors who have huge money, who have savings, are more well researched. and they are roaring with regards to optimism, with regards to improved expectations. Yes, we are dealing with uncertainty, but for the time being, what we have, it looks like that things are likely to improve, especially with regards to the cure and with regards to vaccine. I think that is very encouraging.
Before we begin the question and answer session, I just, if everyone allows me, I'd just like to throw in my thoughts here as well, that there's no need to panic. Panic करके आपको कुछ भी नहीं मिलेगा. आप बस सोच समझ के, जैसे हमारे colleagues हैं, हमारे साथी हैं जो कह रहे हैं, सोच समझ के आपने आगे चलना है. और अभी हम बस question and answers शुरू करने लगते हैं. And उसमें, before we begin that, Arslan and Asim, is there something you'd like to say to our viewers? It's an open point.
I think before Asim Bhai does, for everyone in the audience pool right now, I think it's a reality check for us. This COVID, as we are talking about, कि forced saving है, forced realization है, there's a depression, there's a reality check. The things do not always go very stable in life. Nothing is upward trending, nothing is always downward trending. After the tough time, there's always a good time, and it operates in cycle. So I think it's very important for students, young people who have thoughts, to share their thoughts, to explain their thoughts, and to exchange ideas and to work on those ideas. And I think gone are the days where we could just keep money idle and just earn interest on it. You have to put money back into the economy system so that jobs are created, and then there is a trickle down effect, and try to focus on whatever you do to reduce the inequality in the economy. I'll just like to give you an example. This is something which is emotional and personal to me. So we have heard about IPP talks, which the government is doing, and the tariffs were too high. It was 25-30% for a considerable amount of time. So just imagine if this opportunity was given to poor people. If we have Pakistan Banao certificate at 6.5% dollarized, but imagine अगर हम उन labor को कहते हैं 10% dollarize आप दे दें, and we will build a dam on your money, and we will crowdfunding करते हैं, or we would just set up a power plant with your money. So the money, instead of remaining at the top, would have actually come down at the triangle. So for me, it's important that everyone, all of us, engage into seeking more knowledge and enhancing our abilities and sharing our ideas. Don't just keep everything right here. It's always important to have a two-way communication.
And to have a catharsis. Asim,
So,
is there something you'd like to tell everyone?
Yeah. So we were saying don't panic. I think along with that, look for opportunities as well, as this environment may have created several opportunities which you have not evaluated. One is digital, even for the government. I think this is a huge opportunity that the way the government is being managed, the way different departments are being managed, I think there would be huge pressure on the government as well to digitize and I think improve on governance as well. Similarly, I think there are opportunities for all of us to look around in this environment.
Absolutely. So now let's go to the questions. I'll keep the forum open for our gentlemen colleagues. And we have a question here which takes the name of a mutual fund, and they're talking about exchange traded funds. So what I'll just reword the question, and it's if anyone, whoever wants to take it, please feel free. Is it a good idea to go into exchange traded funds?
Okay, so Arslan, I think I should take it forward. So exchange traded funds, globally, there are two strategies that are followed, two investment philosophies. One is that you should be active in terms of realigning your exposures, moving from those which are expected to do better to those which are expected to perform better. So this reallocation is usually called active management. Mostly the mutual funds here in Pakistan are actively managed, and the way to measure their performance, how they have done is against their benchmark. So if you want to evaluate how the mutual fund managers have done, I'm talking in the equity market context because I assume the question is about stock market. Currently in Pakistan, we have only equity exchange traded funds. So I'll compare it with the actively managed equity mutual funds. So globally, what is happening is that there is a realization that probably since many markets are reaching towards maturity, so active managers probably may not be able to outperform the passive strategies or the benchmark. So I think one way to decide on it, because I think this is one thing which probably can be taken as as one thing that you should research about, is how the active managers are doing in Pakistan with regards to their benchmarks, which is the proxy for passive index. So exchange traded funds in Pakistan currently, which are listed at TSX, are essentially the passive indices, and so you would be reliant on the performance of those companies which are actually making that basket or that ETF. While in actively managed fund or a core equity market fund, which is not ETF or benchmark or not an index fund, is where you are relying on the skill more. Market is there, but you are expecting the fund manager to add value to it through its skill and through its stock selection.
Okay.
So I would rather revert the choice to you to research on these dimensions and then decide where you should invest.
Okay. Look at the dimensions and then invest. So we have a question which I would like to take to Arsalan. A gentleman from Saudi Arabia is asking, should he invest in the stock market or mutual funds right now?
I think right now it's important for you to understand that if you're investing through mutual funds, also you're investing in the stock market. So you have to decide whether you want to invest directly yourself and buy the companies, or let the professional asset managers decide it for you. I think it's important not to gamble, not to take excessive risk, not to get carried away, and let the professional fund managers do the job for you. As Asim Bhai was saying, that globally, yes, the markets have matured, but in Pakistan, we look at the entire cycle. We are still in the early cycle investing, and when we go to the GDP growth of 4 to 5%, 3 or 4 years down the lane, then the markets will mature. Meanwhile, you're better off, say, you don't want to invest daily into the stock market, you don't have the capacity to look at it every day, you're not well versed with the news flow, and say, suppose you're working in a coffee shop for 10 hours, you don't have time to research for 5-6 hours every day. So yes, if you want to invest, I think it's important for young people to invest 70 to 80% through mutual fund active investors. Just say, you have got many who have degrees and experience of investing. If you want to learn it yourself, then yes, you can keep 10-20% into direct stocks, and then gain the experience of that.
And Arsalan, because I'm attaching another question to your answer, question that we just got. This is also, what you just said is also relevant to the medium-term investor. Am I correct?
Absolutely. It's precisely for the medium-term investor. You see, on a day-to-day basis, everyone can make money and remain in the false fallacy that he is a great investor. So when people come to me, कि यार 3 दिन के लिए stock बताएं, 1 हफ्ते के लिए stock बताएं, I tell them flip a coin, जो करना है कर लें आप.
Okay, now the next one is a slightly tricky one. So Asim and Arsalan, whoever wants to take it last, take it. The stock market has had a rally. What do you see? Do you see this trend picking up? Attached to that is, what do you think will happen in 2020? It's yours.
All right. So I think in the short term, as Asim Bhai was also saying, and it's a global phenomenon, number one, people are looking more at the policy responses of the government. And in Pakistan, the greatest policy response has come from the central bank in terms of lowering the interest rate to that extent that the distressed companies who had a lot of loans, they will have relatively better off profitability than it was presumed 3-4 months ago. Secondly, there has been a shift from fixed income, जो लोग T-bills or bonds में invest करते थे, वो stocks में आ रहे हैं. And then there is a continuity of the upcycle. You see, people have a psyche. Initially, they were in a denial. That things are not going to improve. Right now, as the discount rate is coming up and the market keeps going up, these guys are jumping in. And unfortunately, in short term, they jump in at a peak. So I think short term, in a couple of weeks or maybe a month, we will see the market will mature. And after that, the pain will start being visible in terms of the earnings announcement, and God forbid, because our total accumulative numbers are still going up of COVID cases. I fear that if we end up seeing a scenario, because I live in Karachi, we live in a southern region, I've seen hospitals clearly saying that the emergency departments are full. So
Mm.
God forbid if the panic kicks in, then stocks and everything will have a reality check. This is short term. I think the rally will fizzle out. In 2020, by the end of the year, I think there is a considerable amount of upside from here, because last there will be fireworks when we will have announcement that the vaccine has been formed and vaccine is coming to Pakistan in 2 weeks. We could see queues of people going outside to the hospital and getting the vaccine and spending without thinking that, yeah, we have had a break for 6 months, we'll spend like anything. But
Yeah.
then the tricky bit will come away. So in my opinion, short term, the market will fizzle out. And in medium term or December, we are set for a rally.
Okay. Now the next question is for Asim. Asim, do you think that there's a question regarding Warren Buffett? I mean, you can read the questions yourself. And I'll sort of rephrase that question. Do you think it's advisable to invest on fundamentals or just technicals or a mix?
So देखिए technicals, fundamentals ये part है investment process का. So fundamentals, so fundamental क्या होता है? देखिए fundamental is about determining the intrinsic value of anything. You, for instance, your car, you usually know it that what is the intrinsic worth because you are getting it from an auto assembler. आप देख लेते हैं कि कितनी use हुई है and so on. For stocks, what you are doing is, what analysts are doing or professionals are doing is that they are making the projections with regards to what would be the future earnings. Then they discount it at a required rate of return or assigning the expectations with regards to required rate of return. And they assign it that this is the value of the stock, this is the worth of the stock. Now, without knowing the worth of the stock, if you are going for something that is, I think, speculation. So you would be exposed to buying something which may be very undervalued or very significantly overvalued. Now, the question is, do you want to do that? So technical, usually what we see that what is how the professionals usually look at, may add value to it by allowing you probably deciding on whether it is in short term a good time to buy. And at times there is a chance of error in technical as well, because they are also dependent on continuous data that is coming in, getting priced in. So it may help you in trading. However, it has, I would say, a percentage of error as well attached to it. However, with regards to fundamentals, what you are doing, if your analysis is right, with regards to future course of business and expectations, now you are relying on is that market will eventually force the valuations to reach, if your earnings forecasts are right, if the business continues to pan out well, then the prices will eventually reach out to that level. Now, fundamental is more long term and is more practical, I believe. However, technical again is essentially more short term and continues to evolve.
Okay, interesting. Someone asked a question about gold. Do you mind if I give that answer?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Not an expert.
सोना हमेशा अच्छा होता है, थोड़ा सा रख लें, ठीक है ना? अच्छा, we have one final question from a young person who says that if you have 200,000 rupees, what should you do with it? It's open for both you gentlemen. Oh, we have another question. So what should you do with 200,000 rupees?
So I am assuming he's a young graduate. He's not going to need money. I would consider it as his saving. I would assign a long-term outlook to it and invest in with a view that this money will, at least this portion of my savings will be fighting off inflation over the period of time and probably add more value to it. So with that money, I would go for exploiting risky investments, assuming, as I said, that I'm open to short-term volatility. I am assuming that I would not be needing this money in a very short period of time. And I have a very long-term horizon and will continue to add well. Especially, I think as early you can start your savings, you will benefit and you will find yourself rewarded, as Arsalan was sharing these stats initially, that how it reduces your requirement to go to work for X many years. So it does the miracle. So compounding does the miracle. You can just simply check what does the compounding effect do. It reduces, it drastically adds value to you. So start early, and this is a great time.
And it builds things up, no doubt. So last question, because we've got 2 minutes, then I have to wrap everything up. I have to summarize what was discussed, so I'll need a minute for that. So last question, Arslan, this is for you. Someone is asking if you've invested in a 10-year PIB, 14% plus, what should you do with it?
If you invested, you were one of the smartest one to invest at 14%. Right. So I think now what happens to the PIBs, when interest rate declines, you make a capital gain. So if you had invested at 14%, your total annualized return right now would have been back of the envelope 20% plus annualized आपका होगा. This is a time आपको forward looking होना चाहिए. Forward looking इस वक्त PIBs पे आपको interest मिलेगा 8%. So आपको, in my opinion, you should sell it and move towards equities and take a stock exposure either through mutual fund or directly. But you had a great timing, so try to time the stock market correctly also.
Yeah, absolutely. So now this is the last minute of this webinar. I like to be punctual. I think it was 4:30 was the last, it was still 4:30, I think, right? So firstly, we discussed what the normal scenario is in investments. क्या सोचना चाहिए, एक normal situation में क्या करना चाहिए. उसके अंदर key elements थे कि time horizon के बारे में सोचा गया. हमने ये डिस्कस किया कि इन्वेस्टमेंट्स क्या चीज़ होती हैं, शर्त क्या चीज़ होती है, इन्वेस्टमेंट्स versus bets. But then we also talked about financial discipline. That's very important. We then discussed COVID. COVID basically reduced interaction initially, physical interaction, and then it sort of broke things apart. Demand and supply were separate. And then we talked about what is abnormality. We had a very interesting point from Asim, if I can go back, Asim. You said that Pakistan has a lot of, sorry, Asim or Arslan, I'm sorry, I'm mixing it up, who said that Pakistan has a different kind of normal. So that was a very interesting point. And then we talked about something which I thought was very critical, that COVID is forcing us to save. COVID is forcing us to think differently. We then moved into how things have changed, and the word uncertainty keeps coming up. It has come up in discussions, and we are trying to redefine what is certain. और उसमें थोड़ा सा मेरे ख्याल है time लगेगा. At the same time, COVID has also become an opportunity for us. It's not just a problem. It is, of course, a challenge and a problem, and it's not easy, but it has also become an opportunity for all of us. Then we talked about the international perspective of how the economies are adjusting, how they've changed. And lastly, we tried to be very practical कि क्या करना चाहिए. उसमें हमारे जो colleagues हैं, उन्होंने कहा कि बिला वजह खर्चा ना करें, आप रीथिंक करें, अपने टेक्निकल स्किल्स बढ़ाएं. और आई एम सॉरी अगर मैं कोई और पॉइंट, मेजर पॉइंट में मिस कर गया हूँ, आई अपोलोजाइज फॉर दैट. बट I think all of us can think very positively about investments, because we have to invest in our lives, but we have to invest with a bit of logic and a bit of more care. And it is important for us to be mindful of risks. Don't take unnecessary risks. So with this, I thank Muhammad Asim, who is here helping us. He's the president of the CFA Society. He's the chief investment officer of IFMP Savings. And you can follow him and Arslan Sumru, who is the managing director of KASP Securities. I'm sure you all have presence on the social media. People can Google your names and they can follow you. And if they have any more questions, I think they can send them to IFMP or IBA, and they can be answered via email later on. My name is Fahim Sardar. I thoroughly enjoyed this discussion. I hope it was just as enjoyable and helpful for all our viewers. And we hope to interact further. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fahim Saab. Looking forward. Thank you very much. Really thoroughly enjoyed this session. Thank you, IFMP, and thank you, IBS.